who needs to register, I will give you a list, but do you need to register? Well, I don't know. That depends on your specific case. It's not the same for a person who has a process pending or who plans to apply for a process to decide whether they can register or not. Probably yes is the answer, because no matter what happens, they have a way to obtain papers. But what happens when you don't have any way? Well, that's much more risky, because if you register, you are providing the government with information about your whereabouts, and they may come pick you up and remove you. So that is where we need to, put everything on a scale and decide whether it's the right thing to do or not. So nobody can tell you to register or not but a lawyer. So what you really need to do is consult with an immigration lawyer about your specific situation before you decide to register. Now, this new regulation has not been published yet in the Federal Register. So what does that mean? Well, whenever the government issues a new regulation, they have to publish it in a special type of newspaper that the government has. It's called the Federal Register. And once they publish it in this register, 30 days afterwards, then the regulation becomes official and the government can really say, now you start doing this. So right now, none of this has happened. We are waiting for the official announcement, and I will let you know when that happens. But it's good that we can see the document so that we can get some information out of it. So I think that the best way to explain to you who needs to register is by telling you who does not need to register, because the list of people who does not need to register is much smaller than the people who do need to register, okay? So let's go through the list of who has already registered, who does not need to register, okay? So if you are a legal permanent resident, this is not for you. If you entered the United States with a visa, with a permit of any kind, you do not need to register. You must have an I-94. And what is an I-94? It's a document that the government gives you to acknowledge that they know that you entered the United States. So if you have a tourist visa, a work visa, investor's visa, student visa, you don't need to register if you entered the United States with this visa. If you were paroled in the United States, either through CBP-1 or to a special humanitarian parole, anything that the Border Patrol gave you an I-94 to enter the United States, you don't need to register. If you were placed in deportation proceedings and you received a notice to appear, you don't need to register. So if you're going to immigration court right now, you don't need to register. If you turned yourself in at the border and they allowed you in but told you to go see a judge, you don't need to register. If you applied for asylum in the United States and you were denied asylum and they sent you to see a judge, you don't need to register. Okay? If you were living at the border and you had a border crossing card, you don't need to register. If you have a visa and the visa is in your passport, let's say you entered on a tourist visa, but then you moved to a student visa and the visa is in your passport, you don't need to register. And your visa is valid, right? If you have a visa valid and you're in the United States, you don't need to register. If you don't have the visa in your passport, but you have a stamp because you entered the United States with that type of visa, you don't need to register. So if your green card expired, but you went to the Office of Immigration and they put a stamp in your passport that says that you are a resident and it's valid, you don't need to register. Everybody else should register. So you will have a lot of questions about who can or who should register. Right now, I'm telling you who don't have to register. Now, the question again is, do I really need to register? Well, you will have to talk to an immigration lawyer who will tell you if you have to or not, or if the consequences of registering are worse than where you are right now, then probably you don't. I don't know. It depends on every person. Every person has a different situation.